Well, I guess it's not morning anymore. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Special thanks to Christine and Kristen for organizing my visit. I really appreciate the time. I know we have about an hour, and this presentation has a lot of information, so I'm going to try and go through some of the most pertinent points to this audience, but I also am going to talk about some opportunities for you to bring visiting Fulbright scholars to your campus. We do have some appointments afterwards from 2 to 2:45 if you have individual questions or would like to set up a phone appointment if that time doesn't work for you. There are business cards on the table. Please feel free to reach out to me. We'll also be sending out a PDF copy of the slides, which will contain links to our resources for applying for the Fulbright Scholar Program. So that will be helpful as well. So I'm going to give just a brief introduction about what the Fulbright program is and spend the majority of the time today talking about the Fulbright U.S. Scholar Program, which is probably the program that's of most interest to those of you in the room. So the Fulbright program is actually an umbrella of programs. So we have the Fulbright Scholar Program, the Fulbright Student Program, the Fulbright Specialist Program, the Fulbright Hayes Program, Fulbright Distinguished Teaching Awards. It's a number of programs that are under the Fulbright umbrella. Most of the programs are run out of the Department of State, the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, which is the branch of the government that sponsors the Fulbright Scholar Program. The program was established in 1946 through legislation by the then junior senator from Arkansas, J. William Fulbright, who did his graduate work abroad in England and was very much impacted by that time and felt as though if we understood each other a little bit better, it might lead to a more peaceful world. So his legacy is in this program, and it's a dual-purpose program, both academic exchange and public diplomacy. So I think it's very important to keep those two things in mind when thinking about applying for a Fulbright Scholar Grant. You're not just applying to do research or teaching abroad, you're applying to be a person-to-person diplomat. You're a representative of the United States. So we've had the honor of administering this program since the program's inception in 1946. I work at the Council for International Exchange of Scholars, or CIES, which is a division of the Institute of International Education. We're headquartered in New York, just across the street from the UN, but I work out of our DC office. So if you're ever in the neighborhood and have questions about Fulbright, you can also see us there as well. So Fulbright in numbers, since this is the 70th anniversary of the program, the 16-17 academic year, we've had over 370,000 Fulbrighters, and that includes people from the United States and people from abroad, because we do have a robust foreign student program and visiting scholar program. We have 800 U.S. scholar grants annually and about the same number of visiting scholar grants. So there is an equal emphasis on both sides of the program. As you can see, Fulbrighters are an impressive bunch. The current president of Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos, is the most recent Nobel laureate that we've added to this cohort. And there have been a number of Pulitzer Prize winners, MacArthur, Genius Fellows, and every year we have to update this, which is a good problem to have. So hopefully you will be a part of this group very soon. So part of my job today, you can have a seat if you want.
I'm just waiting for utensils.
Oh, okay. Part of my job today is to sort of bust myths about the Fulbright program. And I think one of the big ones is that Fulbright is only for a specific field or a specific discipline. In reality, Fulbright is open to everything. The only restrictions in the Fulbright Board's regulations are that you cannot conduct research that would require you to have patient contact. So if anyone works in nursing, is a psychologist, medical doctor, veterinary doctor, you couldn't have contact with your patients or conduct therapy sessions. However, you can certainly teach and conduct research. So for example, right now in Guatemala, I have a medical doctor who's working on establishing the first emergency medical rotation program there. So he's really building the emergency medicine curriculum in the country. So that is an example of what people in those professions can still do. We also regularly have artists, musicians, and people from STEM, social sciences, humanities, you name it, they've been a Fulbrighter. We also have professionals that are a part of our cohort. We often have lawyers, business professionals, entrepreneurs. It's not just for faculty members, and you don't have to be affiliated with a particular institution in order to apply. So if you have colleagues who might be adjuncts or working as independent researchers, they're also welcome to apply for the Fulbright Scholar Program. So shifting to the U.S. Scholar Program, the majority of our scholars are going to be what's called a core grant, which is very likely what the majority of you would be applying for. We have a few smaller programs, International Educator Administrator Seminars, which are designed for faculty and staff working on campus internationalization. That being said, some faculty members still apply for those programs. It's just typical that faculty and lecturers are on our core programs. So the Core Scholar Program supports teaching and or research in over 125 countries. It's open to all disciplines. However, some awards, as we'll see in the catalog of awards later today, will be focused on a specific discipline or set of disciplines. So it's really important to try and find the right award to apply for. With the core program, you're applying to a specific award. You can only apply to one award per competition with a specific project in mind. So for example, if you're an electrical engineer and you want to work with some collaborators in Ghana on a research project about electrification in rural areas, you would be proposing your affiliation, your research questions, your methodology. It's not something where we're going to tell you what kind of a project you have to propose. You're coming in with a discrete idea in mind. Our application deadline is August 1st. So this is really the perfect time to be thinking about the application process. So I appreciate being here right now because you now have, if you want to apply for the upcoming competition, which would be for the 18-19 academic year, you now have over 4 months to start working on your application. Most hosts will be universities or higher education institutions, but occasionally people will be at national research institutes or with ministries of education or other government. This is especially true in developing countries where you may be working on curriculum development, for example, and English as a foreign language. A lot of our scholars in Latin America end up at ministries of education. I do want to point out that the majority of our scholars are engaged in at least some kind of teaching while abroad. About 38% of our scholars are on research-only grants, but it's very likely that those researchers are still engaged somehow, potentially giving guest lectures, helping to co-teach a seminar, because that's an important part of the diplomacy part of this program, is really exchanging information and engaging with your local community. So Fulbright is also very flexible. Because it's open to visits from 3 to 12 months, depending on the country that you're applying for, you can really find a Fulbright that works for you. We also have the flex option that allows you to do multiple visits for up to 2 years, 2 to 3 visits over 2 years. If you need to find sequential data, or if you're conducting a workshop, and then you want to come back and see how that has been implemented. So this is another option for you to consider. We'll talk about this a little bit later as well. There's also Fulbrighters who are not necessarily, some people think of this as the senior scholar program, and this is by no means limited to your age or rank. I have a colleague that likes to say that the Fulbright Scholar Program is for people at all ages and all stages. So we have postdoctoral and early career awards, which are designed for scholars who are just about within that 5-year range outside of their PhD. We then have the bulk of our awards, which are called the core awards, excuse me, which are open to everybody. And then we also have a subset of awards, which are Distinguished Chair Awards. In that case, the university in some cases or country has indicated that they would like a more senior scholar in a particular field at a particular institution. For distinguished chairs, typically you're looking at someone that has at least 10 years of experience. Often they are professors. They don't necessarily have to be full professors. I've seen independent researchers who are also successful in applying for these awards. Home university affiliation, as I mentioned previously, is not required, so we do have independent folks who end up winning grants. So the principal eligibility requirement for the U.S. Scholar Program is U.S. citizenship, and it has to be at the time of application. We have many scholars who are in the process of becoming naturalized citizens, and as soon as you're naturalized, you're eligible to apply. So that's important to keep in mind. Degrees as required by award. Not all of our awards will require a PhD or terminal degree. We know that some of our most effective lecturers often do not have terminal degrees, and they bring a lot of important field experience into the classroom. So if you have adjuncts or lecturers in your department who don't have a PhD, that shouldn't prohibit them from applying for this program. We do also have professionals and artists who are outside of academia who end up applying. Teaching experience is required. Some countries will be looking for at least 3 to 5 years of university level experience outside of PhD work. Excuse me. One thing to keep in mind about the terminal degree is that while in many fields a PhD is the terminal degree, excuse me. For the purposes of Fulbright, we consider the MBA, the MFA, Masters of Architecture, and a few others to be terminal degrees. Now that being said, there are some scholars who, and the JD, and there are some scholars who, when they applied, there wasn't a JD. For example, there was a Bachelor of Law, and that was a terminal degree, or the BFA was a terminal degree. In that case, given the professional experience that those people have, that terminal degree requirement can be waived. So don't necessarily count yourself out if you aren't in that particular circumstance. So selecting the right award is really important. People often ask me, what are the chances of me getting a Fulbright? And that's difficult for me to tell you because there are 466 awards, and each award is selected individually. And within those 466 awards, over 800 grants are yielded. So it could be that for one grant, or for one award, we get a lot of interest, and for another award, we get no interest. So it's very difficult for us to gauge where you're going to have the best chance. So instead, I encourage you to think about it in terms of fit. Where are your skills and expertise best aligned with what the award is requesting? So you'll see a lot of awards that are listed as all disciplines, and that means that they're really open to having anyone in any field, but then if you read a little bit further down, it says all disciplines, but we really have a strong interest in public health and law. And if you're in public health or law and you're interested in that country, that would be a good little ding 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 that you might want to consider that award. Now that being said, if you're an artist, I wouldn't necessarily discourage you from applying for that award because it could be in a particular year we don't get someone from those fields that are highly selective who apply, or perhaps your project is better than theirs. So try not to think about you versus another person, but try to focus on the quality of fit for your project for that award and the quality of your project. Regional experience and language ability. Outside of Latin America, you won't find a strong language requirement. That being said, within Latin America, some countries are really starting to teach in English more often, so you'll find that there's some flexibility in that. If you have a lot of regional experience, it can be an asset, or it can be something that is not held against you per se, but not something that's preferred by the country. So for example, in Brazil, they have a strong preference for scholars that haven't spent a lot of time in Brazil because they're really interested in engaging new relationships. So if you read through the award description and country preferences carefully, you'll catch little things like that. Also, the relevance of the project to the host country. How will the host country benefit from your project and the host country and the host university? So if you're going to do research so that you can publish an article or a book, that's great for you, but how is the host country going to benefit from that? And why do you need to be in that host country? Could you do that research just, here at the library when you're on sabbatical? You need to make a good case for yourself. So right now I'm going to walk through the catalog awards really quickly. So I'm going to squeeze back here, hopefully, and blind myself. So this is our catalog of awards. Our main homepage is CIES.org, which is listed at the bottom of my business card. Our catalog of awards is awards.cies.org. This is a brand new catalog. It's launched every February, and our application deadline is the following August of every year. So this is a really dynamic, filterable tool. Our old one was kind of like a phone book that was online, so it wasn't as good. So can someone give me a country that they're interested in?
Australia.
Australia. And how about a discipline?
History.
It's kind of funny how
Accounting, what?
So if I put in this, it's going to bring up all of the awards in Australia where history is listed as a preferred field, or any award that's in all disciplines, meaning that you can apply to any discipline there. So then over here, there are a number of other filters that you can use. So we already have our region and our discipline, so we're going to ignore those. But activity, so we have teaching, teaching research, or research only. So what would our historian who's interested in Australia?
I like teaching research.
Okay.
Can't speak Australian.
I used to have a boss from New Zealand, and he had a Kiwi to American, Kiwi Yankee dictionary, so you can get one. So we really restricted it, and we said teaching research only. So this is going to limit us to just the global award, which is probably not a great fit for this. So if this happens, then I would encourage you to then open it up to look for all of these. It's unusual that it comes back like that, but it's possible that they have a really strong preference for research or teaching and just not both. So in the case of Canada, for example, you can only do research or teaching research. You can't do teaching only. So this is a good example of that. So we have a number of research only awards here that are for senior scholars. So these are going to be more like distinguished chairs. Got a lot of research going on. So this gives me a pretty good indication that this is what Australia is looking for. Now, if you're really keen on teaching, this may not be the best fit for you. But if you're open to just doing research only, then this could potentially work. So we could, for example, look at this distinguished chair in arts, humanities, and social sciences at the Australian National University. So every award is going to look like this. It's going to have 3 important tabs about the award and 1 about the country. So on the right-hand side, you're going to get key information about the award. There's 1 grant available. You have to have a PhD, and it's a distinguished chair. So you have to have at least 10 years of experience in your field. It also has the people that you can contact if you have questions after reviewing the information that's available. So in the award description, this is what you can do in the grant activity. So they're looking for collaborative research, how long you can go, when you have to go. It's important to keep in mind that many countries do not follow the American academic calendar in the Southern Hemisphere. You're often starting in February and going until November. So that's true in Australia, parts of Africa, Latin America, and there's places in Japan that start in April. So you have to pay attention to the grant dates carefully. Location, so where you can affiliate. In this case, this is a hosted award, which means this is the only location that you can go to. And they're looking for applications in all appropriate disciplines. So this is an example of one of those all disciplines awards, but it's told me art, humanities, and social sciences. So if I were a theoretical physicist, I would not apply for this award.
What about education? Would that apply, do you
I
think?
think in this area, it likely would.
Okay.
Yeah. If you scroll up here, you'll see the award requirements. So if an invitation letter is required, a letter of invitation is required, which means you're going to have to reach out to our friend Paul Pickering, that's an awesome name, and let him know about what you're interested in doing and get the requested letter and get that required letter. Now when you're sending out emails like this, what I encourage faculty to do is include your CV and a brief description of what you're interested in doing. So talking about your research interests, what you teach here, what you'd be interested in collaborating with. The most compelling projects, often people have done research and looked and seen that our friend Paul here happens to be an expert in 18th century British history, and so are you, but you also look at British colonial history in that time. So you could write to him and maybe say, hey, I see you're an expert in that. So trying to cultivate a relationship is really helpful as well. So additional qualifications, this will be important to read through carefully because this is what the country or university is saying that you have to meet in order to apply. And then the part that you guys are most interested in, other than that, are the financial benefits. So I can't speak on behalf of Millersville about sabbatical policy. I'm sure you all know that much better because it's something that affects you, but you'll need to talk to your deans and chairs about how that works. But this is the stipend that you will get by participating in this program. So it looks like about 6,300 Australian dollars for a maximum of 6 months. So 6,300 Australian dollars a month. Plus they're going to give you a housing allowance. Some countries will also provide a separate living allowance. It looks like this is probably combined in either the housing or stipend. All Fulbrights include a travel and relocation allowance. Some will often include a settling in allowance in case you have to buy furniture or I don't know, if you have 3 children and there's only 2 beds that are furnished and you need to buy an extra bed, that's an example of expenses. Some countries and regions will have dependent tuition allowance. Sub-Saharan Africa, there's up to $25,000 a year per family that you can be reimbursed if you are enrolling your child either in a local school where school fees are required or in an international school where school fees are required. In many countries, school fees are very normal, and so we try to accommodate for that. So in this case, in Australia, they may have the tuition fees waived. Okay, so this is what your catalog of awards is going to look like in general. You can also do a search. If you just go back to this main page here, if you're starting out and you're just saying, you know what, I'll go anywhere. You can just click on Find Awards, and then you can put in some key words about what you do. So, is anyone here in business?
Yes.
What field of business? Okay, so I could type in here marketing, because marketing is not going to be one of the disciplines that we have listed, but business admin is. So this is a way for me to easily see which awards specifically have the word marketing in them. So you can do this for any discipline. So if you work in engineering and you work in circuits, you can type in circuits, and it's going to help you more quickly narrow down what's going to be a good fit. Now, we saw in the last award it was open to arts, humanities, and social sciences. We're going to see some awards that are going to be very specific, like this one in Botswana. Botswana. They only want someone in business administration. So if I was interested in sub-Saharan Africa and I worked in business, if I had this award and maybe an all disciplines award in Tanzania, it was all the same to me, I would look at the Botswana award because they've designated an award just for my field. So this is another way that you can go about doing it by typing in keywords. Oops, sorry. Are there any questions about the catalog?
You said the letter of invitation, is this issued by the hosting
Yes,
or by Fulbright?
by the host institution.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to talk about that in a little
Okay.
bit greater detail, but that is something that is a good question. Oh, I didn't hit. Can someone hit present? Sorry. It's a little funny setup. A little,
Just down here.
yeah, thank you. So when you're selecting the right award, you're going to consider all of these things as you go through the catalog of awards. You're going to see some say that they're open to flex, meaning that they're open to multiple visits, while others are not. So if you, for some reason, can't be abroad for the full time, you need to keep that in mind when you're narrowing down your awards. If you do apply for the flex program, you do have to indicate in your project statement what your timeline is and what you'll accomplish on each visit. And it's important that you're very specific because part of the peer review criteria is feasibility of your project. And if it doesn't seem feasible in your timeline, you will very likely get dinged for that during peer review.
And if it's only teaching?
If it's only teaching, that's a good question. There are some flex awards that are open to teaching, but those are typically more having to do with curriculum development. So I don't think it's as common in teaching only, but you'll see it occasionally. Yeah. So we also have some opportunities that are open to what we call multi-country. That means you're going to multiple countries, but you're staying in the same region. The State Department has 6 regions. So the Western Hemisphere, which is Canada and Latin America, Europe, Eurasia, so that goes from Iceland all the way over to Azerbaijan. You know, just a few countries in there. Sub-Saharan Africa, which is also a really, really big region for us. Middle East and North Africa, South Central Asia, so India, Maldives, Nepal, etc. East Asia Pacific, so Australia, New Zealand, Japan, China, etc. And I'm sure I'm missing one. Oh, okay, maybe I did. I'm trying to get in my head. It's not working. So we have 4 regional research programs where you can go to multiple countries doing research. So the Sub-Saharan Africa Regional Research Program allows you to go to 2 to 3 countries over the course of, I think it's 5 to 9 months. So this is a really neat opportunity if you are really interested in doing research all over the continent. Same thing for Middle East and North Africa. South Central Asia also has a similar program. In the case of the ASEAN program, so that's restricted to the ASEAN member countries, so it's going to be a little bit more limited. Some of our other regions have programs that are restricted to 2 countries in particular. So in the case of East Asia Pacific, it's cross-state straight studies, so Taiwan and the People's Republic of China. In my region, it's in Mexico and Canada. So if you're working in something like supply chain management, this could be really interesting. This is also a really interesting time for, political scientists. We just elected a new president here. There's a new prime minister in Canada, and they're about to elect a new president in Mexico. So there's a lot of different things that you can explore through that kind of an award. And it's an award that's often not that it's undersubscribed per se. So I'm not telling you explicitly to apply for this award, but maybe you should consider applying for it because it's one that often goes overlooked. We also have an award in European Union Affairs, which allows you to go to, I believe, up to 2 countries, but they have to be EU member countries. So you couldn't do, like Armenia and Austria, you would have to do Austria and Iceland. Well, Iceland's not the EU, that's a bad example. Republic of Ireland. So, and then there's an award between Austria and Hungary. So this might be interesting to those historians among you. We also have a pretty new award for us, which is called the Global Award. This is the 2nd year that we have grantees out on this award. This allows you to go to up to 3 countries, but you have to go to at least 2 regions. So can someone give me an example of what they do, what they're in, which discipline here?
Health education.
Health education. Okay. So with this would actually be a great opportunity for education because pandemics are obviously something we have to think about. So if you wanted to study how countries deal with something like hand washing, you could maybe go to Zimbabwe and South Africa, and then also go to Panama to see how they're dealing with something like Zika and things like that. So these tend to be projects that benefit from a global perspective, and you really have to be very specific in what you're applying for, because you're going to have to include, just like for Flex, a timeline for each segment, why you need to be in each country, and when you're planning to go. You can do them back to back if you want to, or you could do perhaps 2 countries, come back, and then go do your final segment. So this is, as you can imagine, a popular program, but it's a really interesting program that we're getting a lot of great projects out of right now. So if you're interested in this, there's someone in my office that works on this program specifically. Her name is Lisa Hendricks. If you have questions about that program, you can feel free to reach out to her. Her information is in the catalog of awards. So the application components, if you're going to apply for the program, the application itself is pretty straightforward. You have to fill out some basic biographical information about yourself, complete a 3-page project statement, submit a CV, which is a maximum of 6 pages, which I know is hard for academics because you have a lot of pressure to publish, but our reviewers are volunteers, so we ask that you try to limit it. For distinguished chairs, you can submit up to 8 pages. For those of you who are going to be teaching or teaching research, you need to submit at least 2 course syllabi, and it's a total of 10 pages, so you have to be creative with that as well. They can be syllabi you've used here, or they can be syllabi that you're going to develop specifically for what you're going to teach abroad. Bibliography is only required for teaching research and research only, and that is how you can talk about the research that you're going to draw upon when you're doing your project. You also don't have to cite in your project statement. That's something that people often do. But your 3 to 5 pages are yours to talk about what you're going to do, so you don't have to cite. I know that's unusual, probably will make you nervous, but those pages are really dedicated to what you're going to do. 3 letters of recommendation. If you're teaching, one needs to come from a chair or dean who can speak to your abilities as an instructor. We also recommend that 1 letter come from outside of your home institution. So someone, if you're in the American Studies Association, someone from another university that can comment on your work. Just makes for a stronger application. And then depending on the award, you may have to submit a language proficiency report, a letter of invitation if it's required, and then supplemental materials such as a portfolio for those of you who are in the performing arts, journalism, or architecture. If you're in the arts but you're teaching or researching something theoretical, you do not have to produce a portfolio. So these are some application resources that I'm going to go through. Sorry. I'm coming over here again. So these links will be available to you after the presentation. This is going to link to our website and our catalog of awards, as well as our application instructions. This is a 20-page document that walks you through every question you could possibly have about the application. But someone always has one that isn't on here, so we try to update it every year. But if you have a question and it's not in this guidance, feel free to call us. We also have application guidelines, which will be very beneficial as you're considering applying for a program. So I'm going to expand here the teaching research. So this is a checklist essentially of what you need to do. So the project statement, we have a guidance for project statements. So this is a set of prompting questions that if you answer these questions, you will be hitting the review criteria on which you'll be judged. If you're applying for a teaching and research award, you need to answer both of these groups of questions. And they're going to be related to things around how are you going to conduct your research, your methodology, how does your experience prepare you for this, why does it need to be done, etc. Focused on feasibility, quality, impact, and your abilities as a cultural ambassador. Similarly for teaching, why do you need to teach in this country? What can you contribute? How are you prepared to adjust your teaching style for a different culture? How will you deal with students who their first language may not be English? Things like that. And then for those of you who are applying for a Flex Award, there will be some additional components that you need to address. We also have samples from successful project statements in the past. So we're not going to include full project statements because obviously that's somebody's intellectual property, but we have snippets, so sample overviews about what they're going to do. And this may be helpful to you to think about how successful applicants have done this in the past. Where did I? So back to the teaching research list, we have guidance on how to cut down your CV if you need to, how to build your bibliography, what we're looking for in the syllabi, information about the reference letters, and then to your question, sir, about letters of invitation. So not all awards will require a letter of invitation. That's actually something you can filter on. So if that's something that's concerning to you about having to find a letter of invitation, there are a number of awards where you actually don't have to get one. It's either you're going to be placed by the Fulbright Commission or U.S. Embassy, or it's at a particular university and you're not necessarily required to have one, but you can have an email conversation with them. We have a full video dedicated to what an invitation letter is. So if your host university has never hosted a Fulbright Scholar before, you can send this to them so they can get an idea of what's in there. If an application indicates that it's strongly preferred or preferred, it would be my advice to you to try and get that letter so that you're a stronger applicant. There are a couple of ways, if you don't have an affiliation already, that you can go about doing so. So if you're interested in going to Japan but you don't have an affiliation, you can start at your Office of Global Education to see if there may be a university where there's an MOU that's existing and they can make an introduction for you. You can check with your professional association to see if they have an active branch or members who are active in that professional association there. We also have the Fulbright Scholar Directory, which I'm going to show to you as well. It's also linked in our presentation. So it's right here on our homepage, and you can find who has gone on a Fulbright before. So there are a couple of ways that you can do this. You can look for U.S. scholars that have gone abroad to the country that you're interested in or in the field that you're interested in. Or you can look for everyone that's done a Fulbright in your discipline, and perhaps you'll see someone that's been here to the United States on a Fulbright, and you can reach out to them as well. So just to do an example search, who wants to pick a country? Not all at once.
Finland.
Finland. Okay, and what discipline should we pick?
Education.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then I'm going to click search here, and this is going to show me both all the U.S. scholars that have gone to Finland in education and all the Finnish scholars that have come to the United States on a grant. Sorry. So here we go. So got a number of people, and this is really just in the last 5 to 6 years. If you're looking further back, we have other archives. So here we can see that Pila was here doing comparative education from the University of Jyväskylä, at Vanderbilt. So if you do comparative education as well, you could reach out to her. We don't have her contact information up here, but through the power of Google, I'm sure you guys can all find whoever it is that you're looking for. Now, another way that you can narrow this search is by searching here for their home institution and see if there's anyone that you maybe know in the field. Most of the time when I do this search, someone goes, oh, I know him. So that's another way that you can start, is reaching out to them to find out about what their experience was like and how they went about, making that connection. So the other thing that you can do is, if you don't know anyone here, there's no one who's maybe in your field who's gone from the US, is you can search for a visiting scholar and reach out to them and see if they'd even be interested in hosting you. So that's another way that you can go about doing it. But there are a number of advanced filters that you can use. And you'll also be able to use this for the Outreach Lecture Fund, which is for the visiting scholars, and something I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So back to our little checklist here. For the language proficiency evaluation, if you have to do one, if you're going to a country, let's say you're going to France and you're a native speaker of French, you can just fill out the self-proficiency evaluation. You don't have to get evaluated. If you are going somewhere, let's say you're going to go to Mexico and do research, and you are an intermediate Spanish speaker, you're going to want to get someone here on campus from the Department of Spanish to evaluate your level. And then supplemental materials, if you're in one of the creative or performing arts or journalism, there's instructions for doing your upload process here. If you're not in one of those fields, please don't try to sneakily put in something that we didn't ask for, because we'll just delete it. That happens every year. So, okay. Ooh, what did it do? Okay. So, a couple other things that we have available to you. We have webinars every week. We have 2 a week. Typically in the spring, we just had one on political science and public administration. If you can't make the live session of it, then record it. We also have regional webinars, and then the closer we get to the actual competition deadline, we have virtual advising. So it's typically an hour-long session where we answer as many questions as possible, and it's helpful to see the other kinds of questions that people have. Yeah, so those are going to be some resources that are going to be helpful to you as you're preparing your application. This slide will go out along with the links. So we talked about the letters of invitation already. This is a non-binding expression of interest from the proposed host abroad. Keep in mind that host institutions are allowed to issue multiple letters of invitation, and it's not a guarantee of a grant, nor is it a binding pledge that they're going to pay you something. It should be on the letterhead. It should be written by someone who's going to be collaborating with you, but in some countries, the person collaborating with you may not have the authority to write the letter. So for example, I think in Ghana, they specifically state that the letter of invitation should come from the vice chancellor or vice dean. If it's required at a certain level, they'll indicate that in the catalog of awards. So this is what you'll be reviewed on: your credentials and professional standing and accomplishments, how that is suitable for what you're proposing. We want to see that you are prepared to undertake the project that you've been done. These peer review criteria come up in peer review, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. 2 of the big things that peer reviewers also focus on are quality and feasibility. They want to make sure that you're going to actually be able to do what you're proposing to do. The evidence of your personal qualities, specifically related to adaptability and suitability. So that's going to come through when you're talking about how you're going to adjust your teaching methodologies for a different culture, or how, if something in your research may be taboo in country, how you're going to navigate that. That's also going to come through in your letters of invitation. So you want to make sure that the people you're asking are going to be, positive, number one, but also that they're going to be able to speak to those aspects of you as a professional and personal. And then also the potential impact and value of projected outcomes. If there's one area of the project statement that I think people forget to talk about, it's this one. And it's potentially one of the most important, because the whole idea of Fulbright is that it's going to have an impact beyond you. So you need to talk about how is it going to have an impact on your host community, how is it going to have an impact on your home community or your home university. Impact can take a number of different forms. You could be engaging local graduate students and teaching them new research methodologies and then continue to engage in collaborative research. It could be establishing a new MOU and study abroad program. But those are things you should be thinking about from the very beginning. So when you're submitting a competitive application, you need to think about the two-pronged goals of academic exchange and mutual understanding. Why you're interested in a particular country. People also often forget this. You don't want to leave any blanks or holes for peer reviewers to make up for you, because you're the one who's best suited to answer those questions. Then again, outcomes, impact, the things we talked about. Your project statement is really the opportunity for you to talk about what you're going to do, not who you are and what you've done. So I've seen project statements from really brilliant people who haven't focused on what they're going to do, but what all their past research has been. That's not the purpose of the project statement. So the review process, in August, we'll get your application, conduct a technical review to make sure that you're eligible for the program that you've applied for and that you've submitted everything. If you haven't, we'll contact you and let you know and ask you to turn something in quickly. There's a two-stage peer review process. In September, we begin with discipline-specific committee review. So if you're an educator and you do special education, you're likely going to be reviewed by a committee of people that work in special education. They're going to provide some comments about the quality of the proposed project. Are you using the right references? Are you using the right pedagogy, etc. To our regional research, or regional panels, which will have the up or down vote. So occasionally it's just one country, some of our bigger countries. Other times we review all of Central Asia together because it's just easier to do that way. So you'll want to make sure that your project statement is written in a way that it's going to meet the review criteria, and that your peers in your discipline are going to be able to see that it's a quality project, that it's written in a way so that someone who's not in your discipline but maybe went to the country that you're applying to go to can understand it. Are there any physicists in the room? Okay. Not picking on you two gentlemen. However, I got a project statement not too long ago where it was 4 pages of what I think was math, not entirely certain, and then a page of what was most certainly not understandable English to me. So, that is an example, and nothing you two would do, I'm sure, of what you want to avoid. You don't want to be so highly technical that someone out of your field can't understand what's going on.
Yep.
At the same time, you don't want to be so sort of, not basic, but so rudimentary that someone's like, why are they explaining how to walk to me? Like, you know, you want to find that sweet spot. So I really encourage potential applicants to have someone outside of your field read your application and give them the review criteria. It's available on our website. And they can maybe say, you know, I didn't really understand this part of it, but I thought that you did, you know, this aspect well. And I think that's some good feedback that you can get. So find a buddy outside of your department, outside of your college even, to make sure that you're hitting that right spot. That being said, a good example, I read a project statement about climate change from a chemist, and it, you know, I thought, oh God, here we go again, I'm not going to understand this. But it was written in a way so that it was relatively complex, but it was written in a way where I could understand the problem that she was articulating and her hypothesis and the research that she wanted to do. So she really did her work in making sure that it was complex enough for the discipline committee, but also written in a way that a non-scientist could understand it. So thank you for letting me pick on your discipline. So when you two apply, you can you can let them pick on someone else. But. So after it goes through the regional review committee, they're going to have an up or down vote. So they're either going to recommend your application for in-country selection review, or they're not going to recommend it. They're using the review criteria when they're making this decision. So at this point, you're being reviewed against a bar. Do you meet all of the review criteria sort of boxes? When you move on to in-country selection, you're being compared to other projects. So your principal concern should really be on the review criteria, because you can have no idea what somebody else is submitting. It's unlikely they're going to call you up and say, hey Bob, guess what I'm doing? That's just not going to happen. So you really need to focus on putting together the best project possible that you can submit. In November, we'll let you know about the outcome of regional review, and then selection typically takes anywhere from December to right about now, when the federal budget's coming out. We find out about funding levels. So grantees are notified of final approvals throughout the spring. We will send you grant packets and information, and for those of you that are going to a country that's hosted out of a U.S. embassy, or specific countries in South Central Asia and the Middle East, you will be invited to an in-person pre-departure orientation in Washington, D.C., and we cover all of the costs for that. So these are some impacts that you can consider as you're putting together your project statement. I'm not going to read through them, but it's often a time for personal reflection, cultural growth. The home and host institution often benefit in different ways. The host institution is going to get perhaps a specialist in your particular field, while your home institution may benefit because you're going to have a more global outlook that you can share with your students. Does anyone know who this lady on the left is?
Yeah, she's the president of Liberia.
Yes, very good. That's the first time this week. You win a prize. You win a free lunch.
How about the Fulbright?
Oh! I know that. But I can't agree with the free lunch that you just ate on.
I would settle for that.
So this is actually a Fulbright Hayes scholar who, I think this picture was actually taken in Cote d'Ivoire at a conference. So it can be a really powerful experience for both the scholar, but also for the home and host institution. So it's important to think about that as well. So administrator seminars, I'm going to kind of, in the interest of 5 minutes I have left, blow through these last slides, but if you have specific questions on them, please let me know. These are for staff and faculty who are focused on internationalization. These are not project focused, but are more cohort programs where you're going around the country, meeting different universities, building relationships, etc. We have 6 for Millersville and 1 community college seminar, so this would probably not be appropriate for you. Collaborative research programs, these are not currently open for application, but we have 2 programs that bring together U.S. and visiting scholars to work together on a specific issue. They're called the Nexus and Arctic programs. They tend to work in groups on collaborative research and do short-term exchanges as well. Our visiting scholar program, we also have about 800 scholars a year. For those of you who have colleagues abroad that you might like to bring here and invite them to be Fulbright scholars, they would apply through their U.S. Embassy or Fulbright Commission in country, but the letter of invitation is often a big stumbling block, just like it's something you're concerned about here. It could be something that prevents them from applying, so invite them to come. There's no financial obligation to you for inviting a core visiting scholar. We just ask that you provide them with access to facilities and office space if possible. We take care of their visa, stipend, etc. I won't bore you with this because it's boring. Christine knows what I'm talking about probably, unfortunately. The SIR program is a really interesting way to bring visiting scholars to your campus if Millersville isn't currently hosting a lot of international faculty on a visiting basis. So this is a cost share program. And it's institutionally driven where you're applying to host a scholar and then we match a scholar to your campus. So this is a scholar who is in Ohio. He's from Ghana and he was doing dance for a year. And this is primarily focused on teaching at the undergraduate level. The Outreach Lecturing Fund is another way you can bring people to your campus for short-term visits. If you look up in the Fulbright Scholar directory and see who's here in your field and you see that there's someone who, you know, if you work in exercise science and you see there's someone who invented something that you are currently teaching to your students, you can invite them to come to your campus and give a talk. Our office will cover the cost of their transportation, but we ask that you feed and lodge them while they're here. You can also do combined visits. So if you and Franklin Marshall want to invite a scholar for a series of lectures, that's another way you can do it. Faculty development programs, these are cohort programs where you apply to host scholars for 10 weeks in specific fields. They're working on pedagogy, English, and this is a way to help develop the junior faculty of these countries. We also work with Afghanistan as well. Other Fulbright programs, and then how you can stay connected. You can sign up for My Fulbright at CIES2.org, and you can enter in your name, your discipline, your email, and we'll start emailing you as webinars are available or if new awards are announced. So this is a great way to stay in touch with us. You can also email me. You can contact our staff. Their contact information is available both generally on our website, but also in the catalog of awards. And then you can visit our website. Does anyone have any questions? I know we have 1 minute to spare. She's saying it's okay. Okay. And it's okay if you don't have questions, if you want to email me.
Give us like an example of the awards that on demand and the ones that not really.
Okay, so that's a good question. So I would think about it in terms of what's going to attract a lot of interest. So we had that example earlier of the Business Administration Award in Botswana. That's going to be a more focused award where people only in business administration and economics can apply, and probably only people that have an interest in an Anglophone country or sub-Saharan Africa. Whereas an all disciplines award in the United Kingdom that allows you to affiliate with any university in any field, that's probably going to be more attractive to a wider audience. That's not to say that that Botswana award isn't going to be competitive, but it's going to have probably a smaller audience thinking about it. So that's why you try to think about it in terms of fit. One way that you can think about it is have people heard of a country, like a lot of people, give an example of Paris in France. A lot of people have heard of Paris and, you know, are maybe going to want to affiliate with it. But maybe there is a better affiliation for you in Senegal, where it's also Francophone, but maybe fewer people are thinking about Senegal. So think about everywhere where you could do your project. Now, I'm not telling you to apply for a site that fewer people have heard of, but think about, is Paris the only place you can do your project? Or could you potentially do it elsewhere that is also a good fit for you? Yes, there are going to be webinars where they're called hidden gems. We're going to have one for the Western Hemisphere, and if you see the word hidden gem, that might be a good indication to you that you should think about that award because it's hidden, but it's a gem. And so and we'll do one for the Western Hemisphere specifically, where we'll talk about countries like Guyana, Suriname, Paraguay, countries that may not be on everybody's radar but are really eager to host scholars. Any other questions? I will send these slides out, and I do have some time this afternoon to meet if you have specific questions. So thank you again for having me here.